how to dust with black powder.
Here's the recommended method to properly use a fiber duster. And this was also the method determined from a personal survey of over 140 experts at an international symposium on fingerprints. And generally, about 94% agree. Take your powder and dip the ends of the brush in it, being careful not to tangle the fibers. Once you have powdered your brush, tap off all the excess powder. Hold the brush between the thumb and first two fingers of one hand. Then twirl the brush in a circular motion back and forth. And at the same time, take the brush up and down the evidence surface. Be careful not to place the brush too close to the evidence surface, and you don't need a whole lot of powder. And remember to process for prints in a gradual process rather than in one pass. Similar to the way you paint a table, 3 coats of paint is generally better than 1 thick coat. The same technique holds true with using a feather duster, but it works especially well with fluorescent powder because of the need to use far less powder. Place a small amount of powder on the feather duster, shake off all the excess powder, then dust the same way as with a fiber duster. The experts say that one of the most common errors comes through using way too much powder, so please be careful. And in all cases, the use of strong side lighting is highly recommended to help you visualize the print. So get and use a good flashlight.
So let me go ahead and demonstrate, but I'm going to be doing more than just demonstrating what he did. I'm going to talk you through how to get your brush prepared and all of that. A fingerprint brush, you do not want to touch the business end of the brush with your skin because you have moisture and oils on your skin, and then that will degrade the ability of your brush to do its job. The way to remove it simply is take the cap off the end, turn it upside down, and let the brush fall out. Now save the tube because that's where you're going to store your brush after you have used it. This is a really nice brush. It's nice and soft. Now sometimes you'll get a brush that's a little bit stiff. If that's the case, and I don't have to do it with this brush, but if I had a brush that was a little bit stiff, what I would do is wrap it on the edge of a table. I just wrap it on the side as I rotate it, just to loosen it up, loosen up the fibers. All right, but this one really didn't need that. But the next thing I do is I look at the brush and see if I have any fibers that are hanging down from the end. But if you have some that's hanging down, and actually I have quite a few here on this one, you want to trim them off with some scissors. So I'm just going to trim those off. Now, why am I doing this? Well, because if you get these where they're hanging down and they're not even, you'll end up with maybe a strand just dragging through your latent. While everything else is just all even, this one strand is dragging through your latent and can actually put a little line in it. Now, you should also once in a while check your brush. So you've been using it a while, hold it, look at it, and see if you've got any stragglers hanging down. Okay, so I'm good now. Now, what do I do with this brush to get it operational? Well, I need to load it with some powder. So the way I'm going to load it is I'm going to take my fingerprint powder and dump a little bit out on this piece of butcher paper. Now you could use some notebook paper or something else. Depending on how long your powder's been sitting, if it is sitting around a long time, it could end up caking a little bit. So you might want to tap it in the container like this, just to kind of loosen it up. If you do that, you want to wait a moment or two to let any of the dust settle before you open it up. I don't want to get too messy, so I'm going to go ahead and put some gloves on. So I'm going to go ahead and open the top here. Now, the best way to open one of these containers is not to hold it up here and open it up. Instead, put it on the table, grab a hold of the side, and now open it. Because if you're opening it up here, there's more chance of spillage. Now I'm going to take a little bit of this powder and dump it out onto the paper. I will then take my brush and dip it into the powder as I twist it to load the brush. So I want to get some powder on the end of the brush. And you need to have more than I show you there. All right, that's not quite enough. So let me put some more on here. Now you're going to find that a lot of it's loose. So if you get a little carried away and start spinning the brush, it might get on you. So I spin it gently, shake it a little bit so that the loose stuff falls off, and then check it. That's better, but I think I want, no, that's probably good. I'm going to put a little more though. Now what you're going to actually find is the first few lifts that you do, they're going to look okay, but as your brush gets used more and more, you're going to find that you get better results because it gets a little more even. Now, once you get your brush loaded, and I'm going to just kind of wipe off a little of the extra here because I don't want it to have too much on it. Now I can go ahead and set my brush aside. I can close up my container. Now, if you weren't concerned about DNA and you were trying to be thrifty, you could fold this, into a V and then pour it back into the container. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw this away. Now, let's say that I want to fingerprint something. And we'll go ahead and use this. This is a piece of glass in a frame. We'll start with that. And we're going to spin the brush as we apply the brush to the surface. And you do have to touch the surface. I'm just going to go and spin this, and I'm going to make a little bit of contact. And already you can see the prints there. Now, why do we spin the brush? We used to always just brush like a brush. And someone got the idea, a lot of these patterns are circular in some respect. So by going back and forth on them constantly, maybe we're damaging those prints. So what we do now is we spin the brush, take a look, and if it's a loop, well, maybe then we can brush in the direction of the loop. But if it's a whirl, then we're going to want to keep spinning. Now, it's just something to be aware of. Now, as I'm doing this, I should be using two different things to help me. A strong flashlight, so I've got this flashlight, and also a magnifying glass. So I can check to see if I'm getting what I want. All right, so I'm getting some really good results here. That's just enough. And after a while, you'll know how much powder you actually need. The next step, I'm going to go ahead and take my fingerprint tape. And when you've used it, you want to make sure you always fold over each time the edge that you cut so that you have something to grab a hold of next time. If you don't do that and this tape wraps all the way around, sometimes it's really, really difficult to get the tape back started again. So always put that. Plus, it's also a good way to grab a hold of the tape when you need to use it. All right, so I have these three pieces here. I could get two of them on one lift. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and get two of these on one lift. Now, what you want to do also is pull out enough tape in one motion for your lift. Don't pull out a little bit and stop, a little bit more and stop, and a little bit more and stop. Because if you do that, you get these lines in the adhesive, and that line might go through your latent. Now, that doesn't make the latent of no value, not in the least. It can still be identified and all that, but it just gives you a cleaner lift, and you will appreciate it, or your fingerprint examiner will appreciate it when you start doing your comparisons. All right, so I'm going to pull out one piece here. Now, if I just put this tape straight down on my latents, I will probably, most likely, get wrinkles and bubbles in my result. Now, wrinkles just because it didn't go on perfectly, and then bubbles because you trap air underneath the tape. The problem with bubbles is if there is a bubble where you have ridge detail, the tape will not pick up the powder in that spot, and you'll end up with a white circle, a white hole in your latent print. So you want to avoid that. Now, how do you avoid that? Well, what you do is you anchor the tape. This is why I like the transparent tape. You anchor the tape onto the surface, and then you use your finger, or you could use a squeegee to smooth out the tape. See, I have the tape roll up still, and so I press like so, and now I should have pushed any air out along with it. Now I can go ahead and cut the tape, remembering that I need to leave some of the tape to fold over, which I have done there. Okay, now what you want to do is look at your result and see if you have any bubbles or wrinkles. That looks really good. I don't see any at all. If there were, what I can do is take my fingernail and rub really hard on the bubble to try to press it down and pick up the powder under it. You're not going to hurt the print if you do that. And notice I'm really just pressing where the print is. I'm not pressing the entire edges, only where the print is. If there's a wrinkle, you can try to smooth it out the best you can. You can't lift the tape back up and try to smooth it out, put it down again. You've ruined your print if you do that. But you can try to fix it by pressing on it. All right, so now I have my tape there. The next thing I want to do is take a latent print card and fill out the information. Let's say that's a window. So I'm going to put my case number here and the date. With that. The offense, the location, and the victim's name. And this is the outside master bedroom window. And that's me. And they gave me an ID number. Then, as we discussed before, I'm going to go ahead and draw a diagram to show where these prints came from. So this is my outside master bedroom window. Got a slider part. And then this is where my two prints were that I just lifted. And let's say that it's 27 inches down from the top edge and the center is 16 inches. All right. Then I'm also going to draw an arrow to show which way is up. And then one thing the card doesn't have is the identifier for this particular latent. So let's say this is my first one. So it's going to be L1. All right. Now I can put my prints on here. What I also want to do is make sure that I put an arrow to show which way is up on the back. Now I can go back to my window and pull the tape off. As you pull the tape off, and you pull it at an angle, of course. So that little piece that was folded over, that's what you grab a hold of. Now, sometimes when you pull it like this, it's going to want to curl or end up getting against your skin. See, it's wanting to move. It's wanting to go up on my finger. So be aware of that. And if you need to, maybe hold on to the other edge for a moment and then bend it a little bit so it doesn't move. So now I have my lift. So now what I'm going to do is put this on my card the way that the arrow is indicating for up. Now, again, if you just put it straight down, you could get wrinkles in it. The bubbles won't be that big of a deal, but still you want to keep those out. So like before, what you want to do is anchor the edge like so, and then smooth it out as it goes down. So this actually ended up being a very good lift. So this is like the card I filled out, and then this is like the fingerprints I lifted. It's a little easier to see now. Here are some prints I lifted. You can see the tape here. Now this one looks a little nicer than this one. And that could just be the amount of moisture and oils. Now I'm going to do this one more time. I'm going to use a different object. I'm going to use this drinking glass here. Then I'm going to use my brush in a circular manner like this. And there they are. See how they look to you. If I take a fingerprint card and stick it in here, that might help us to have a background. There, that's better. But there are two really nice prints there. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out some tape. Now, what some people will do is they'll actually cut the tape before they put it on. You could do it that way as well. The first time you probably noticed I cut the tape after I had put it down and smoothed it out. But some people, what they will do instead is they'll cut the tape. They'll let the scissors hold the end of the tape like this. And now they have a piece of tape they can just put down like so. All right, so let's try that. All right, so there's my print. And notice on this one, there is a little more background powder. So the glass probably wasn't totally clean. And I have one bubble. Let me get that bubble out. All right, so there it is. So let me just show you a couple more quick examples. Here is a firearm. Let's say we're trying to find fingerprints on here. This is what they'll look like. So we have a print right here in this indented area on the revolver. That's the kind of thing you'll be looking for. Here is a fingerprint on the frame. That's what we're looking for. And then I did mention that you could use a squeegee. You can smooth out with your finger or use a squeegee. Now, I was having trouble smoothing out because I had my glove on. But if you have a squeegee, you don't have to worry about the gloves. The next thing we're going to talk about is magnetic powder. Magnetic, sometimes magna powder is what they call it, allows for the application of a magnetized rod with a magnetized rod that has no bristles. So we pick up this powder that has some kind of metallic property to it. Often it has iron shavings in it. And then you pick it up as a ball of powder, which you see on the screen there, and we drag it across the surface that we want to dust. Don't use it on metal because there's a magnet involved. And so you could have a problem doing it with it. The magnetic tip can touch the metal. So all surfaces except metal, and it's somewhat less destructive because you're not using a brush, you're just dragging the powder itself. That being said, if you overdo it, the metallic properties or the iron in the powder can be a bit abrasive. All right, so let's look at a video that shows the use of the magnetic powder. And the brush,
Processing for prints with a magnetic applicator is fairly straightforward. You place the end of the applicator near the jar of magnetic powder, and the magnet's attraction to the iron powder causes a cluster of powder to form around the base. The powder cluster is then dragged over the evidence surface, and the powder particles adhere to the latent print residues. Then, when you're done, place the applicator over the jar of powder, pull up on the handle, and the remaining powder goes back to the jar. As you can see, this is a much cleaner process that is far less destructive to the print itself, although a little bit more time-consuming.
so this is what the standard magnetic applicator looks like, just like in the picture. And it does have this plunger device. So at the end of this rod, there's a magnet. When the magnet's down here, that's how you pick up the powder, drag it around, and then to get rid of the powder, you just pull back on the plunger and it'll fall off. The TEX, Magnetic Wand System, fingerprint powder applicator. Now, they market this as being a way to cut down on contamination, especially DNA, just like using the single-use brush or the disposable brush. And the idea is these plastic parts, you can use it one scene and then throw it away and then use a new plastic part. They come 3 in a package. The rod has a magnet in the end, and it's actually very strong. It's a strong magnet, so it does the job. So I'm going to put this in here and all the way down to the bottom. And then I'm going to take some magnetic powder. And I'm just going to use this on a piece of paper. Paper is porous, so it's actually going to cause the oils to soak in. Iodine fuming and anhydrine will give you a really nice result, but you can also dust with black powder or magnetic powder. So let's use the magnetic powder. With this applicator, I just bring it near the powder and it picks up a clump of powder on the end. Now, some of it can fall off, that's okay. But what I do now is just rub this across or drag it across. Don't let the applicator touch. All you're letting happen is the powder. Okay, so that looks pretty good there. Now, I can either dispose of this or I can just put this over the powder and pull the plunger out. And now the powder drops. I can even clean up extra powder that's on my paper by going back over again with the plunger down. And there you have it. And then as far as preserving that, you could cut it out and I just put it on the back of a backing card, photograph it. So you can see you get some pretty nice results with the magnetic powder. Also, you often will see that the background tends to be a little cleaner when you're using the magnetic powder. Fluorescent powder, if you have a background that is a little hard to see what you're getting, a fluorescent powder can be nice because when you hit it with the alternate light source, this is what you get. Fluorescent powder relies on the principle of luminescence to provide contrast between the fingerprint and the background. To do this, you need to have an alternate light source. The one on the right is more of a crime lab type one, though you could take it out in the field. It does have to be plugged in. Normally you see those in the lab. They have a filter wheel in them, so you have different wavelengths. Though normally we're just going to use the blue light with the orange filter to see the result or to photograph the result. The one on the left is a handheld model. And let's go ahead and see a video on how to do this.
And with regard to the increased use of fluorescence, this is in large part due to the Blue Light Special, the Blue Light Ultra, and other alternate light sources, along with the inherent advantages of using these types of powders, of which I'll cover in a minute. The Blue Light Special and Ultra products, while they're great for finding traces of body fluids at a crime scene, also work great in conjunction with fluorescent powders as well. What you do is powder the entire area of interest, barely detecting developed latents. Turn out the lights, and the prints that were processed with the fluorescent powder all of a sudden come alive. The prints are then photographed for the record using some simple photography techniques, then lifted.
Here is a feather duster. And you can already see I have some fluorescent powder on there. There's a very light fluorescent light color there. Let's go ahead and see how this works. I'm going to go ahead and take this object here and put a fingerprint on it. All right, so I got a fingerprint on the back there. Really can't see it, but I'm going to go ahead and dust it. Now, the best way to do this is dust it with the alternate light source on and with your orange goggles on. So we would use the ALS, which is a blue light, and you see it caused the powder to show already. But the best way to see it is when you're wearing orange goggles. So here are the orange goggles. I'm going to go ahead and dust with the goggles on. I'm going to put my goggles on. And here's my brush. Here's my light. Now you're not going to be able to see what I see, but not yet. I will make it happen though for you. Woo, very good. I got more than enough powder on there. Now, let's see what it looks like under an orange filter for you with the alternate light source. So I'm going to go ahead and put an orange filter in front of the camera and hit it with my alternate light source. And you should be able to see a really nice fingerprint there. You can also see I've got some on my fingers. And there's on there and there. So you can see how that works. So that came out really well.